lovely people, welcome back to my channel. I'm Sammy and I'm a writer who likes to learn about writing through reading and share what I learn with you. This week I am talking to you about Lore of the Wild by Analeigh Sbrana. I'm guessing that's how the last name is pronounced. I went to her TikTok page to find out if she ever introduced herself or like those, hi, I'm the author, this is how I say my name. I didn't find any of that, but I did find out that the second book has just had a cover reveal for this particular series. I do want to preface the review that I'm about to give of this book with the fact that I read this in the peak center of my reading slump for the year of 2024. I started this book at the end of March and I didn't finish until the end of May. And that's saying something coming from somebody who generally can finish 2 books on average, like 1 to 2 books, 1.5 maybe, books in a week. It took me 2 months to get through this one. So I think that there was a lot of other factors that attributed to my reading experience of this book that were in my head and not necessarily just in the book. I feel very confident that this author has a lot of potential and I have every intention. The audiobook is available at my library. When the second book comes out, I will probably give it another go in a different mindset. I'm trying to do that more often instead of like fully writing off a book because where I was at the time of reading it was not the best place to be. But I will probably give the first book another go when the second book comes out in an audiobook format, so whatever I'm placing on the characters from my mindset will not necessarily be a part of the internalizing of the story. I will take what is given to me by the narrator and go from there. So I do want to put it out there that I did give this book 2 stars, but I think that was more on me than it was on the book. But at the same time, giving the book 2 stars, I think there's a lot that I learned from it for the sake of getting better at writing. I think I had an experience with it that was beneficial to the grand scheme of who I am as a reader and a writer. So that's why you're getting this video. I put in too much effort into reading it and finishing the book because I could have DNF'd it, but I finished it. I'm gonna read the summary off of the Goodreads page because I find that the books that I don't have the best time with the experience of reading them, I have a hard time summarizing them in my own words because I don't want to like put my emotional experience onto the concept of the story. So I'm gonna read this summary right quick. A stunning romantasy debut about an enchanted library, 2 handsome fae, and 1 human who brings them all together. A library with a deadly enchantment, a fae lord who wants in, a human willing to risk it all for a taste of power. In a land ruled by ruthless fae, 21-year-old Lore Alamayu's village is trapped in a forested prison. Lore knows that any escape attempt is futile. Her scars are a testament to her past failures. But when her village is threatened, Lore makes a desperate deal with a fae lord. She will leave her home to catalog/organize an enchanted library that hasn't been touched in 1,000 years. No fae may enter the library. There's a chance that a human may be able to breach the cursed doors. She convinces him that she will risk her life for wealth, but really she's after the one thing the fae covet above all: magic of her own. As Lore navigates the hostile world outside, she is forced to rely on 2 fae males to survive. 2 very different, very dangerous, very attractive fae males. When undeniable chemistry ignites, she is not just in danger of losing her life, but her heart to the very creatures she can never trust. I got this book on pre-order because I wanted to support the author. So we're here because of a really great pitch and my love for reading debut novels, because reading other people's debut novels gives like potential for what I can do or what you can do, what like gets people out into the world and allows people to see success. So on to my thoughts, which are I focus on the good stuff, caveat, the stuff that I noticed was good in a reading slump in this section. So I wish there was more than what I wrote down, but we're doing what we can. We're doing what we can and we will circle back another time. I think the descriptions were of the characters, like the physical descriptions were done really well. Having Black authors write Black traits is very a very natural way of getting descriptions that don't feel icky. the way that sometimes white authors can make characters feel a little bit icky. This provides the very clear opportunity that you can't read around it. Like, take for example Rue in A Hunger Games, where a lot of people read that because Rue reminded Katniss of Primrose, she was probably white, even though it was like the innocence and the age that was the comparison. There is no space for that in this book. Everything has clear distinction behind it. There's hair care in the book, there's skin care in the book, there's discussions of like how light hits people in a way that doesn't ever describe anybody as the same color as a food. It's done so well in a way that I think a lot of non-people of color, or even like different people of color, if you want to write more diverse backgrounds of characters and describe different physical attributes of other people and not make it icky, reading books by people who are in that community, writing about people who are in that community can give you a lot clearer of a understanding of what doesn't feel wrong to the people who are actually experiencing it and what sits right with you as a reader, and then you can attribute that into your own writing. There's also a lot of potential for like history to be revealed in a way that Lore, the main character, does not have access to true, honest history, and the potential for personal history, for her own story of things that maybe she doesn't remember, or things about her parents who are no longer around. Information of her past can come up. There's potential for that, as well as history of this world. Like, how did the humans get into this Fae realm? How are they trapped in this forest prison? What's happening? Did they ever have magic? Is it always this particular individual situation? And I think that potential is what kept me coming back into the story of like wanting to figure out more about where everything came from and who people are and why they're there and all of that, like questions that had the potential to be answered, that were set up in a very good way, kept me coming back to see if I could find the answers over the 2 months that it took me to read this book. It's fine, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. So let's get into the things that I thought could be improved. And this is, again, coming from my perspective as somebody who is in the depths of a reading slump and having a hard time continuing forward. I'm honestly, as I'm recording this, I'm honestly considering checking out the audiobook and seeing what happens, but I do want this video to go out next week. So we'll see what happens. I think the tone of this book was inconsistent, or not at all what I expected. We started off with a tone that was set up in a way that felt like it was going to be a cozy fantasy. Like, yes, there is drama and things happening, but there are a lot of descriptions that slow the pacing and spread the intensity of things out farther away and lessen the stakes of things, which makes it lean towards that cozy fantasy area. For me, I came into the book expecting a high impact YA fantasy, like lots of things going on kind of story. And then we get like the Fae are just being nice and supportive and like helping her out through her thing, and they're giving her good food and she's having a good time. And I just was really bored by the like tone of it not necessarily being what the first chapter set up. Like, there's a major magical event that terrorizes her hometown, and then she's kidnapped essentially by the Fae and taken away from her home to go to this library thing. And then everybody's just super nice. So it felt like whiplash tonally. And then there was like extremely gruesome but not detailed violence. Like, I don't know how the gore came to be, but I know that there was gore in the aftermath, which was confusing, and then an entirely out of place and moderately over detailed sex scene that made me uncomfortable because of how random it was. There was nothing that made me think that this was going to be a book that would have blatant, overly detailed smut in it, and it was just one scene, and the one scene was like in the middle of a bunch of other stuff. To not give any other spoilers, because of how out of place it was, it made me incredibly uncomfortable because I was like, why are we doing this? There are things that are significantly higher stakes. And then that's where we were spending our time. Someone on Goodreads actually described the book as giving them tonal whiplash, and I fully understand that from my reading experience as well. Like, I feel like there needed to be something just like 1 through thread that made it feel more consistent. Like if it just kept active stakes of the same thing, like the stakes were always at minimum at this level and like they were there and present, but it would like go down and then other things would show up and then you're like, but what's going on? What's happening? And I can see this being a lot of things that the author likes in fantasy books being put together and being put into a story where there's a Black main character and like there's not racism in the book, but there is like speciesism. Like she's not treated poorly because she's Black, she's treated poorly because she's human, and there are fae that are essentially Black and they're not treated poorly. So it handles the fantasy realm of not having to force Black characters to be dealing with racism because they are Black, and that's great, but there's also too many other things happening at the same time. It just needed to like focus in on one aspect, focus in on one underlying tone to keep the train moving. We jumped tracks a lot. I also felt that the age of the characters, specifically the human characters, were very unclear. Like, I do not know how old Lore is. Lore could have been anywhere from 15 to 25 years old. I have no idea. Lore's human friend Gray, same thing. No idea how old these people are. No idea how old they're supposed to be. No idea how, like, what their presence in their society is at their age. I don't know how much they can possibly know about the world. But it reads like it's YA until you get to some of the things that are not allowed in YA. So the characters read really young, but also have things going on that make them seem like they could be older, and it's just very confusing. Like, for example, there's a lot of exposition and like planning and thought processes that take up a lot of space in the book. And because it's told from Lore's perspective, the fact that there's so much exposition makes her read younger, like makes the whole book read younger, and therefore her read younger, because it feels like we're having our hand held through the process of like thinking. And that's not necessarily required to have your character plan everything that they're gonna do. It starts to get boring and repetitive to get more planning than you get of tangible action. And the more that she thinks, the younger she seems. And we have so much that's just like planning for something to happen and then reflecting on something that happened. And it's all cognitive. It's all thinking. It's all in Lore's head. And we don't actually get to see things happen. It's all, we're being told so much of the story and we don't experience enough of it. And that's like the classic show don't tell writing advice. And that's so specific that like I need to have something that feels like we're moving. And it really ends up messing with the pacing because you're getting so much exposition and so much time just being spent talking and thinking and reflecting and all of this stuff in her head, that the moment that we start doing something actively and we're not being told about the plan, it happened once, about 70% of the way into the book, because I had the Kindle book. Once, 70% into the book, there was a moment where Lore is just doing. We aren't told what the plan is. We aren't told, like, what she's thinking about, what her goals are, what the, like, anything. There are no thoughts happening. It is just action. And because there is just action for the first time in the whole book, up to 70% of the way in, I do not trust that she has any kind of logic behind it. I don't trust that she's doing the right thing. I don't trust that there's going to be any kind of positive outcome from her actions. I have no reason to believe she's doing anything well. I think because we are just doing and we're not thinking through the plan, it's going to turn out badly. So like the one time we get something that feels like we're being shown it is too late in the book, that it becomes more upsetting that I am now being shown something when I haven't been shown anything. So all of the like potential for me to have optimism for that situation goes straight down the drain just because of the pure tonal and pacing shift in that. Pivoting, to be super vague, I think the twist felt like a cheap shot. Because in what world would anybody think that that could possibly happen? And I'm filming this in October, and I finished reading the book in May, and the fact that I still feel the same visceral upsettedness about the twist at the end is wild. Generally, if it takes me a while to get to like my notes on a book, I will have to Google something or reopen the ebook to see what my notes were referring to, but I know exactly what this is referring to, and it's so upsetting, and it does not make any sense. And I'm genuinely at this point hoping that I just misunderstood what the twist was, because that's entirely possible. Towards the end of the book, I was just rushing to be done because it had been 2 months and like 5 days. So I'm genuinely hoping that I misunderstood the twist, but I'm pretty sure I didn't. And the fact that like the twist honestly bothered me so much that I genuinely didn't think that there would be another book in the series. I genuinely had no expectation for there being an additional book. So seeing that there is a sequel in the works, I need to know how that can possibly work with the twist that we were given at the end of this book. Like, how? How do you move on from that? Where do you go? Who's on the cover of the second book? Who is it? And like, this book came out in February. So if, I don't know what the timeline is, Lore of the Tides, the second book is coming out in February. So maybe we will circle back in like March, because I need to know, honestly. So what can writers learn from this book? I feel like I've covered a lot of it just in my general notes of things, but I do want to circle back and just do my general like cleanup of the things. Writers can absolutely learn how to describe physical attributes of characters who are Black and what makes them feel more tangible and real and human rather than like a sprinkle of diversity in the midst of whatever else is going on. And absolutely how to describe people of color without using descriptors that are food, because that is the worst, I think. No, it's not the worst. There are worse things to do, but it's absolutely near the bottom. I think you can also learn the importance of establishing a slope to your tone in your story, the importance of making it an easy transition from one set of tone to the next set of tone, rather than it being like, you want a ramp instead of a staircase missing 5 steps. Like, you don't want to go from here to here like that. You would like to go like that to get there. And I think that that is really, really apparent in this book, because you are doing a lot of jumps and like jumping from tone A to tone J instead of walking your way up there. I think it also shows how important it is to trust your readers, especially in content directed towards adults, to trust them to be able to follow what your characters are doing without holding their hand the whole way through. I think it's super beneficial to assume that if your character is effectively in character and consistent, then their actions will make sense to your readers because they have been the person that they are the whole time that we've known them conceptually. Having that potential in your character rather than in your narration and exposition of why they are doing what they're doing. You don't have to explain every single action that they're going to take, every single decision that they're going to make, every single turn that they're going to look around to see what the best option is. Your readers can figure it out. And a lot of the point of telling stories is experiencing and empathizing with a character. So the point is to be on their team, or at least, if not on their team, then at least understand where they're going and why they're going that way. Please, if you're gonna put a twist at the end of your book, at least have some clues towards it. Have it make some sense logistically for the world that you have established for the rest of the story. Don't just throw something in because it would be so unexpected and crazy. That's the exact reason why I was upset about it, was that it was so unexpected and crazy that there was literally no way that I could possibly have guessed that that would happen. Or even considered it a possibility. And just having snippets of information, of things that people can keep an eye out for, or things that will click into place as soon as you get that twist at the end. There are so many amazing examples of how to do a good twist. It's really hard to see what they're doing well until you see what a bad twist does. Then you can start to highlight on a good twist. And that's not to say, like, if this twist was like, wow, that was so crazy, I did not expect that even a little bit, that's so amazing, oh my gosh, that's crazy, fantastic. I'm glad you had a good experience with it. It made me mad because I read intellectually, I read cognitively, I read also emotionally. So the lack of logic and thought behind it really upset me. But if that's not the type of reader you are, and that's not the type of reader you're writing for, then that's fine. I'm not your target audience. We're good. Yeah, so maybe I'll circle back in like end of February, early March, and I'll have read the second book and listened to the audiobook of this story and see if I have any new opinions, because I do really, really want this author to do well. I enjoy the presence that she has as a person on like social media, at least. I don't know her personally, but my hope is that this author will be somebody that I will want to seek out. And right now, I don't know, but I'm not gonna ever hold a debut novel against somebody because you did it. You got it out there. And with effective marketing, it's, I think, on the bestseller list for something. And that's awesome. Just because it wasn't a hit for me and it was very much a miss doesn't mean that I'm writing this author off for the rest of time. That's not fair. We'll give like 3 strikes for any marginalized group ever. I think you have to be a bad person in real life for me to also write off your books. But that's all that I've got for you today. Thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. I started off in a very negative space with it, and I'm glad you stuck around to hear me out, because I do think that there's a lot of benefit in discussing the goods, the bads, and the confusing about any kind of book, especially if you were looking at it from growing yourself as a writer and knowing what to look for in what you want to read. So I will see you guys next time.